first name, age, breed, species, any relevant info like that. How have things been going so far? So as you all are entering that, Katie's going to give us a little bit of a live demo here. Hi, Katie Cat. What does Katie Cat want? Katie Cat want kibble. And I don't know why her buttons aren't sounding. Hi, but she's pressing kibble and wet food, which is not surprising for her. She loves her food. So I have everything very close by to her buttons. And in case anyone is just joining us, we are beginning with a demo from my cat who has decided that she wants attention right now. And I'd love to hear more about you all. I will read through your intros in just a moment here. There we go, Katie Cat. And Bernie is my other cat who is a bit distant on the screen here. He just got back from a hike with us, so I imagine he's probably going to be pretty quiet. Katie said no thank you, though. She opted into a nap at home, so she is ready to go. All right, y'all. Elise, welcome to you. Hambo, Kiki, and Nico. Learning since Christmas, fantastic. Well, the cats are already representing this evening. Hi, Ash. I'll introduce myself and my whole crew here in just a moment. Katie already introduced herself, obviously. Tony, welcome. Still waiting on your buttons? No worries. This way you'll be ready to go as soon as they do arrive. Awesome. Love it. 2 Aussies, Apollo and Aries, and 2 cats, Moki and Oreo. I love it. I have 2 cats and 2 dogs as well. And both of my dogs, I've got a mini American Shepherd, so tiny version of your crew, and a Border Collie. So I love the herder cat combo going on here. Irma, always great to have you. Irma is our community coordinator and will be helping out with any technical issues. So if anything is acting up for you, please don't hesitate to reach out if you need help. We're here today and going forward to help with whatever we can with the buttons, with this community, and you all feeling like you're going to be successful. So always thrilled to have you. Thank you, Irma. Kim, welcome to you, and Kirby, very persistent when he wants something. Good to know. Yeah, lots of cats representing already. Deborah, welcome to you and your Shih Tzus. Lucy and Leo, great names. Yeah, okay, here we go. Now we've got the dogs repping. Yara, welcome to you and your boxer. And Lucy's 14, Leo's 10. Great info to know. Thank you, guys. Yeah, and quick note, Chrome and Safari tend to work best for audio and visual when I'm playing some videos here in a bit. But as long as everything's behaving, don't necessarily feel the need to change. But if anything acts up for you, hopping back out and right back in should hopefully take care of any issues. This is a call that's being recorded, and so you'll receive a follow-up email and transcript as well. And Eileen, welcome. Only one pressing button so far, no worries. Have 2 buttons. One dog is staring at the buttons intently, which is progress. The other dog only started showing interest when I deleted the recording and just practiced targeting on the button. Interesting. Good to know. Thank you. Julie, welcome to you, and Gracie. Labradoodle, so fun. And a bit more on the agenda here. Hi, Katie. I think I might need to charge your base, and that's what's going on here. Hi, yes, water. So on the agenda today are introductions, which we're doing now. Then we'll chat through the keys to button teaching, modeling, first words, and target training. This is an interactive discussion, so feel free to ask questions throughout in the chat. In the chat's a little bit easier for me to answer when makes the most sense as we're going through the presentation to kind of tie it together with what we're talking about. And then I can keep track of all of your questions better as well. And then I'll share additional resources, and we'll have time for Q&A after. So if it's easier to talk through your question, more comes up, we'll have time as well at the end. And there'll be times when I'll be asking you as well to, give me feedback in the chat or info that might be helpful. So whatever you're comfy sharing in there, that's just helpful for me to tailor it to you all and what's going to be best for your learners as far as we can tell. Obviously, I'm not meeting you all and your learners in person, You know your learners and your household best. You're the experts on them. So I'm not here to tell you you're doing anything wrong. I'm here to help us figure out what is going to be the best practice for your household. And when we're talking through things, these are generally the best practices that we've developed over the last 4.5 years with thousands of learners and researchers. But this is still a very new field. So always looking to change, improve, and develop what's going to work for all of our individual learners. So if I'm saying something you're like, that doesn't sound like it's going to work for us, no worries. Let's figure out what will instead. Awesome. And Calvin, always great to have you. Calvin is our guide coordinator for FluentPet, fantastic member of the community. And Charla, so great to have you. And Millie here, 10-month-old mini golden doodle. Started using buttons a couple days ago. Awesome. And had been using outside button previously. Nice. That's fantastic. All right. And a little bit more about my household here. My name is Morgan Krug. I'm a certified dog behavior consultant. I've been working professionally with animals for going on 18 years now. And while I'm best known for teaching my blind cat Jasper to use the buttons, who's pictured here, since she's passed, I've had success with multiple visually impaired kittens as her kind of successor, and I've had success with my herding dogs as well. And a little bit more about us as a company. While Alexander Rossi and Christina Hunger were using buttons previously with their learners, FluentPet is the original button teaching system. And our mission is to figure out how to teach dogs, cats, and the other animals we share this planet with how to talk or an approximation of it. And we believe that pulling this off will take a village, a community that can develop and share button teaching tips and tricks and work together to discover the most successful button teaching approaches. So that is where you all come in. Our success in this mission entirely depends on your success with your learners. And the more of us who are able to progress, the faster we can figure out just how far all this can go. And in case anyone is wondering how far can all this go, we think this video really helps paint a picture, and I'm going to try to settle down my crew while this is playing here, so I will be right back.
The foundation for getting started with buttons is just a desire to connect. I can't remember the exact order, but I think she pressed stranger mad, and I was like, what does that mean? And then ouch paw. And then she came over to me and she put her left paw in my hand, and I was like, okay. And I looked between her toes and she had a foxtail stuck between her toes.
This was the stranger in her paw. She's got a mat between her toes.
She was able to request medication multiple times after having an eye procedure with eyes help or some combination of that. And it's not all medical related. There's lots of fun examples too, don't worry. One of my favorite early ones was with Scout, a Catahoula mix, who would repeatedly combine water and bone. Took us a little while to figure out what she wanted, but it was ice cubes. So she got an ice cube button and was able to advocate for herself in that way. So it really is amazing how creative they can be, even with a limited vocabulary. All right. And so, how do we begin? How do we make this happen? For those of you who are just beginning, I know everybody's at a little bit different stage here, totally normal. But our first step is going to be verbal modeling or modeling in general. So, when you haven't had your button set up yet, just focus on verbally. If you're trying to still narrow down a few buttons, really paying attention to the language that you're using, being specific with that language, keeping track of what other members of your household say as well. Because if one person says, take the dog out to potty, and the other person says, hurry up the whole time they're going to the bathroom, that's going to be a difficult concept to be consistent around. And if you speak multiple languages, fantastic. Just pay attention to what you're using most frequently, what word or concept your learner is already familiar with, if possible. And you can avoid homonyms really easily if you speak multiple languages. So you do have some advantages there. If anything, just more options. And worst case, you set a button down and you thought that you'd narrowed everything down, you'd kept track of your language. I started with a hungry button for Jasper way back because I would ask her, are you hungry all the time? So I was like, oh, surely that is the one to start off with for her. And then I realized when I was actually narrating to her, I would say want eat, want kibble, want wet food. I would be specific. I wouldn't say want hungry. And so I adjusted my language and I adjusted the button to have it make a bit more sense. So you can always re-record, you can always make adjustments. So don't get too hung up on finding perfect words and concepts. Just pay attention to the language that you're using. And then when you're ready to narrow down and choose buttons, we want to pick things that are motivating, something that's exciting for your learners, something that brings enthusiasm, if possible, to help teach them that this is an amazing tool that they now have available to them. And the more we can say yes to their presses while they're learning, typically the faster they can get all of this. So be ready to say yes. And again, when you're ready to put the buttons down, 3 simple steps. First, press that button, something that step 2, you can immediately follow through with them on. And then step 3 is repeat. Go back to step 1, repeat, repeat, repeat. We're talking to them all throughout, but it's a lot of repetition with pushing the button and then following through while they're understanding at first, oh, button has a consistent outcome each and every time. So what does this actually look like? Here's a video with Kelly and her learner Delmer. This is the first 24 hours that they had buttons down in their household. So you'll see a lot of repetition with him. And this is throughout the day for them, but it's going to look a little bit different for everyone depending on what your day to day and your household looks like.
Puzzle. Outside. 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 Puzzle. Outside. Pet. Puzzle. Outside. Outside. Pet. Puzzle. Puzzle.
Yeah,
Yes.
beautiful accidental
Puzzle. Want
press.
puzzle?
Accidental
Puzzle.
presses are
Puzzle.
great learning opportunities.
Outside. Outside. Outside.
Show them the button
Puzzle.
still has that
Outside.
consistent outcome.
Puzzle. Outside. Outside. Outside.
So again, a lot of repetition, especially early on while we're helping them understand, again, that the button has a consistent outcome each and every time. So I have another example for you. So in addition to modeling throughout the day, and again, setting yourself up for success, things that are easy to follow through with, easy to say yes to. So in addition to modeling, just whenever you're around the board, whenever you have time, you can also be working on rapid modeling. So last month we had a food modeling challenge where folks could record themselves working with their learners and just rapidly pairing the button with, in this case, food, but it can be with anything. So Kelly's working with a different learner, Nushka, and discussing snack, having food, and then following through with that food immediately appearing. She's even rubbing the food on top of the snack button to drive home, hey, this button making the sound equals the food right here that you're getting that fast. So it's the rapid modeling, rapid pairing to drive home button equals this outcome consistently. And it should be an outcome that they really want, hence why food tends to be a popular option. But you could be doing this with play as well. Press play and then engage with your learner. And I really like also working with a play button for the cats who are motivated to engage in that way, because you can always, take a toy, drag it across something like the play button and have them hit it on their way to get the toy. And then you can follow through. So you can kind of create or capture an accidental press as well that way. Oh, thank you. And Irma added a food modeling challenge. And Robin, welcome. We have one of our FluentPet guides, Robin here, who is also going to be leading some mentorship club calls that we'll talk about in a little bit with our continuing resources, our free continuing education stuff that we have for you guys. Just a little preview. All right, so the other big piece of this is choosing first buttons and words that are going to set you and your learner both up for success. So our starting buttons ideally should be motivating and meaningful to your individual learner, easy and convenient for you to model and say yes to immediately. The faster you can follow through, the faster they tend to make those connections and associate the button with the outcome. And concrete or actionable. So easy for you to demonstrate and follow through with. We don't want to start with too abstract or complex of concepts, because the soundboard itself is an abstract tool that they're learning how to use, right? So taking an abstract tool, adding complicated concepts to it, that can really slow the process down. But if it's fun, actionable, easy for you to follow through on, easier for them to understand, they tend to get it faster. And then once you have the foundation of that, you can move on to your more advanced, complex concepts. We'll talk about that on the next slide too. Don't worry, because I know some of you all might be ready for that sooner rather than later. And we also want to be starting with 2 or 3 buttons, more than one, to help them understand that different buttons mean different things so that you can demonstrate, okay, this one, it sounds different and, equals food. This one, play, that equals this activity, outside, etc., whatever the ideal ones might be for your household. And if you have multiple learners in your household, maybe having a shared board with a concept that's interesting for at least each of them or multiple of them. Or they can have their own boards depending on if there's resource guarding, that sort of thing. We also have a mentorship call specifically around multi-learner households that I will be leading next month as well, that I would love to see you at if that's of particular interest to you all. So again, motivating and meaningful, easy and convenient, and concrete or actionable. So that's where something like play or toy tends to work well, or outside can work for some learners. But don't feel pressured to start with outside. When you're putting it through our kind of 1, 2, 3 criteria at the top here, if you live on the 10th floor, outside's not going to be easy and convenient for you to model immediately. I'm still glistening a little bit because I just got back from that hike that took a bit longer than anticipated after my little one-eyed guy Bernie napping in the background decided to play keep away and didn't want our walk to end because I only budgeted 45 minutes for it and he wants at least an hour every time we go out. So I didn't start with an outside button despite that being incredibly motivating for him because it would not have set me up for success. I still have to work and do other things, right? I couldn't commit to saying yes to every single walk that he would have requested. So think about both of you when it comes to this. Um, and it's up to you if you want to start more general or specific. So play/toy or eat more general, or kibble specifically or treat specifically. If you start specific, you can always get general. If you start general, you can always go back to specifics. For my kittens, I did start with a general play. They didn't seem to have a major preference for a style of play, a type of toy. But for my border collie, we did begin with ball because ball is life for her. And that was incredibly motivating. So this is where paying attention to your narration, how you're talking to your learners, that can really help narrow down what these kind of early buttons and concepts kind of ideally should be for your household. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me know if you're thinking between options for your household, anything like that. Feel free to type in the chat here and get into the nitty gritty a bit more with what's relevant for you all and your learners. And there's lots of food examples on here. We used to get a lot of concerns about food buttons. Are they going to think that all the buttons equal food? Are they going to become fixated, obsessive? And in our experience, even the most food motivated of learners, once they realize that it's not a limited resource, we're going to be saying yes to the majority of their presses, at least while they're learning, right? If you can't be saying yes, if they're on a diet, there's resource guarding in your household, then don't start with a food button. Set yourself and them up for success, remember. But barring any constraints like that, even if they're incredibly food motivated, if they know you're going to say yes, it's no longer a limited resource and it becomes less valuable as a result. Um, so I personally love starting with a food button and have had a lot of success with my learners with it. And then for those of you who are thinking about more abstract concepts or just curious, what do abstract concepts consist of? These are things like emotions, names, time, um, different things like that can be considered abstract for them. And some of our early kind of boundary creation buttons say you start with food, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I cannot say yes to all of these presses. They're just too enthusiastic. That's a great problem to have. And for the first part of that is I would give them as many things that you can still say yes to. So maybe you can't say yes to all the food presses, but you can say yes to a puzzle. And then they can work through a food enrichment puzzle. And that buys you, 20, 30 minutes plus a nap, hopefully, instead of, feeding out individual snacks, depending on what you started with. Um, yeah, so these can be good ways to set some boundaries, healthy boundaries a little bit. And notice how these first examples are listed in pairs. Ash, come here, buddy. I know your sister's talking about it. Thank you. Here's sound. Here's sound. I'm sorry, y'all. So whenever possible, thinking about abstract concepts in pairs that you can model in contrast or opposition to one another can be helpful. So, hence, more versus all done, yes versus no, now versus later. And when you think about following through with, yes, more outside now, you're taking action with the more, the yes, the now. That's a lot easier to show as concrete kind of actionable behavior than no, outside all done, later, and nothing happens, right? That's a lot more confusing for them. So adding it in pairs that you can model in contrast can be helpful for them. Same with emotions. So think about a positive emotion like happy to be modeled in contrast to sad or mad or frustrated. Safe and concerned is another example for our more sensitive learners out there. And before you're ready to put these down on the board, you can be narrating these. You can be verbally modeling them for your learners. So it's not necessarily a rush to get them on the board, but just start introducing the concepts and again, paying attention to how you're talking about things and what is interesting to your learners because they're all individuals. And so time, again, now versus later or now soon and later, that can be another option, tomorrow versus today. So thinking about how these things go together and can be kind of categorized. Yeah, and we'll talk about target training in just a minute. I see another question came through. Thank you. Awesome. And Eileen said, today I changed outside to poop. Got immediate excitement. We shall see. Yeah, you can always change it up. I do find after having the board in the house for 4.5 years now, that change is inevitable, both depending on what's interesting to them, the layout of the board. We've moved since the first layout as well. So there's lots of changes. As long as you're modeling those changes that you've made, that tends to be the most important thing for our learners. Yeah, and it's interesting because outside that you can model with, play outside, potty outside, poop outside, all different things. But if your learner is really motivated to tell you they got to poop, then yeah, that could be the button that unlocks the desire for them. For some cats, it's a brush button. For others, it's like a cat TV button, which I know Robin just had a video she posted with her cat Ernie using the cat TV button. So think about what they're interested in. And it might be harder for them to communicate via body language alone. And that can unlock the motivation and the desire to use the buttons. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about some target training and then we'll talk about layout, categorization, that sort of thing as well. So you're modeling consistently. You've chosen buttons that are motivating for your learner, but they're not yet pressing independently. That's okay. I personally like to give it a few weeks of modeling. I'm laying a really strong foundational understanding of the buttons. I'm not necessarily in a rush, but target training can absolutely help speed up the process and build their confidence to connect the dots and realize that they have the agency to, oh, I can push this myself. And for learners who, maybe you're filling the hex tiles in a little bit more and they need work on their precision, their accuracy, that can be helpful. Think of it as developing eye paw or eye nose coordination, depending on how they naturally prefer to press. So we've got a few links that we'll go ahead and add in the chat for you. The first one is with Alexis and Bunny. With this target training method, you can shortcut. For those of you who already have a high five, a nose touch from your learners, shake, paw, you can totally pop a button out of the hex tile, put it in the palm of your hand, and just cue them to hit and then follow through. I grabbed the closest button to me that I knew would work, which was more. So not a great actionable button, right? That's why abstract is tough. They press just more. More what? It leads to more questions than answers. So not a great example in this case, but minus what the button says. If you can just cue them, high five, then follow through, or nose touch, follow through, shake paw, whatever, follow through. It might take a little bit of extra work to get it back into the hex tile because that picture has changed, right? But that's totally normal. So sometimes just taking the button with you on the go, modeling it in the moment, asking them to hit it if they do have a target, I love working on that method. So an example of that, our walk button, I recorded while we were on a walk, press walk multiple times while we were on said walk. And then when we got home, hi, Bernie. Hi, bud. And then when we got home, pressed, walk, all done, put it in the board, was able to model it. And anytime I'm making board adjustments, I want to be modeling them as well. It's their tool, right? I don't want them to wake up from a nap or come in from playing outside and be like, whoa, things smell, look, seem different. What's going on here? So model those changes and have them be present for them as well. The other piece with the target training, and I'll get to your more specific target training button in just a moment here, Elise. Great question, by the way. Um, if you see them trying, they're staring it down, which I know at least one of you has seen a learner getting to that stage of recognition that, like, all right, something happens with this button. I just need to figure out how to make it happen. So if you see them trying, whether telepathically staring, a cat, a lot of times you'll see them batting the side of things instead of the top. Totally natural that that's how they approach things, right? Um, if you see them sniffing at it too, and you know they're trying to activate it, when in doubt, help them out. Don't let them get frustrated. Don't have them, keep wondering while they're interested. Go ahead and help them out. So they're tapping it, staring, sniffing, whatever. Come over, and if you can time it so that you're pressing the button while they're trying to activate it, that's going to drive the point home so quickly for them. They're going to get that tactile feedback. They're going to see it light up if it's connect button. They're going to feel it vibrate if it's got the speaker in it. So having that really tactile feedback, feeling the button move, can drive that point home. And so it only took twice of capturing my blind cat pressing before she was like, oh, that's all I got to do and you'll give me food? Great. That's so much easier. So thinking about how you can really show them this is a shortcut, it's fun, it's easy for them. I don't want them frustrated, flailing, that sort of thing. So when in doubt, help them out. The next two are from Cat School and Sarah with Justin Bieber the cat. Love both of these methods as well. The Cat School one works on particular in getting the weight shift to press, as does Sarah's video. But again, with so many of the cats in particular wanting to bat at the sides, and some small dogs like your Shih Tzus, not putting enough weight initially or tapping the top of the button, these weight shift, the last two videos can be really helpful to watch as well. But there's lots of different methods, and there absolutely have been ones in the past, as Elise is mentioning, that target trading is supposed to be a nonsense button, right? And for a while, that was what was recommended, was just gibberish, boop, something. But we found that actually having something recorded on it and having it be paired with, in your case, snack, I love that. I prefer at this point to actually have it recorded with something, that says food or play, whatever they're motivated by, and just follow through with target training, with giving them what it is that the button says rather than the nonsense. So I think you're absolutely on the right track there. There's no one right way to do it. I know our very first button just said target. When it was pressed, it would just say target, which feels silly to me in retrospect, but I guess because I have sport dogs who are trained to run and target things. I was like, oh yeah, that'll translate to the buttons, but then they press target and what, right? So I switched it very quickly to a food button. They're like, oh heck yeah, we're gonna go press that food button. Now where's our food? And you're able to drive home that point a little bit more. So I'm guessing for Nico that a little bit more um, continuing to model always. And I say that to myself all the time too. So always continuing to model. Um, when you see Nico tapping on the top, go ahead and try to time it so you're pressing that button at the same time. That way, you're helping him realize the amount of pressure that's needed and that tactile, again, stimulation of the button moving underneath of his paw. And it typically just takes a few times of that, and they're like, okay, got it. But yeah, when in doubt, help them out. So I would keep at it. I think you're on the right track. Just a little bit more time. Excellent question. Yeah. Awesome. Yep. And I love that you're helping. And you can even be narrating help in the moment too, to drive home again, like this is how, yeah, this is another definition of help. Go ahead, Robin.
I also added the laser video that Calvin made uh, in the thread. You can use accidental presses to also get the mechanism of pressing. So you can use like a laser toy or a feather toy
Mhm.
and sort of drag that over the buttons and start by modeling play or whatever your play word is, and then initiate a play session over the buttons. And then if they press something else, reinforce that with whatever they pressed. And then if it looks like they want to keep playing, model play again and start playing again and see what happens. And sometimes that's enough to get them pressing.
Thank you. I love tying it with the play and the movement and the activity there. Thank you. Yeah, and Deb asked in the chat, what about older dogs? Can they learn this? And absolutely, yes. Um, I do find with our older learners, sometimes it can take a little bit longer for them to see the value in the buttons, particularly if they have a lot of methods that have worked for them over the years with body language or going, specifically to what it is that they're interested in. My little senior mini American Shepherd, he's really adept at staring at what he wants and then back at me and back. But once he realized that the buttons are an auditory cue that I'm going to respond to faster if I'm not looking at him or if I'm, trapped on my phone, distracted, he's like, oh, wait, if I push this puzzle button, that was what unlocked the motivation for him was an accidental puzzle press. And then because I know Kelly's on the call, he pressed it. I knew it was an accident, but I ran to the freezer as fast as I could, got his favorite frozen Kong out of the freezer, gave it to him, and he was like, what? All I need to do is press puzzle and you'll get me this toy? And that wasn't something that he had body language already, you know, adapted to ask for the way he did so many other, treats and training and going outside. He had vocalizations and body language. But for him, once he realized what it could do for him, he was like, oh, great. Okay, I love these buttons. This is worthwhile after all. So it might take longer. But if you can think about what they don't have as much body language to communicate or what needs a little bit more precision or specificity. So something like the brush button for cats can be a good way to unlock the desire. I mentioned that one earlier. So yeah, thinking about that, whereas young learners might pick up the mechanism of pushing the button a lot faster, but they don't always have the vocabulary to go along with it. So you're teaching them new concepts at the same time as you're, building out the board and the buttons and all. So that can slow them down a little bit. So the older learners have the advantage often of more vocabulary and us being better at reading them. It's just a matter of finding what will unlock their desire to want to use the buttons. Hopefully that wasn't too long of an answer. Sorry, y'all. I can talk about buttons all day. I love talking about buttons. All right, so I'm going to show you all where you can find those videos in our FluentPet community, because our best free resource that we have for you all is community.fluent.pet. That's what we're on right now for Bootcamp for anybody who is, not watching it elsewhere. This community has 4.5 years worth of resources now. So underneath of the welcome area here, we've got start button teaching. If you're the type of person who wants in-depth material read through, this section is for you. Yeah, friend Ash. If you like diving into FAQs, we've got 41 different ones for you here. If that's not your jam, totally fine. We also have future boot camps if it would be helpful for you to attend again. If you had to miss part of tonight, if you have a household member that you would like to attend, come back to boot camp. If you want to find a recording of this, you can switch to past. I burn a bean, and see past boot camps there. And then I've been teasing this throughout tonight, but we have our mentorship calls that are back, which we are so excited to have back. So these are free calls for you to kind of dive into specifics, no pressure to talk. You can always be on and listening. But if you want to get your questions answered, as you advance, we've got lots of these going all throughout April, that both myself, Robin, who's here tonight, Jennifer, another guide, and we also have Janine, another guide who's teaching, and Julie, who is a zookeeper. So lots of experience with different species. So much expertise that, yeah, is free for you all to take advantage of right now. So you can scroll through and RSVP for those that work for you. And then under the resources section, this is where you can find more examples from other bootcamp instructors and guides. And then we've got a link to our self-study learning center, the paw targeting tutorials that we sent in the chat, or that Irma added the chat for you all. We also have a link to a soundboard planning tool. So if you're the type who does want to have an idea of where the board is going, take advantage of that. Just let your learner be the guide. They might surprise you on what they're interested in talking about. So if you have a plan, just make sure that you're willing to stray from it. That's my best advice there, as someone who has had to stray from said layout and plans many times over the years. We've got our discussion area. This is where you can ask in-depth questions between mentorship calls and boot camps, if that would be helpful for you. Share updates in chat. We'd love to hear how things are going. And then if you're looking for inspiration, show off your soundboard. Here's that soundboard planning tool in action. Here's another example of it, a larger example of it in action. So you can take advantage of that if interested. But you can get inspired for wall mount options. I like how this one's at a slight incline, so it's easier to press. You can do a half wall, half floor mount. I did that to save space for a little while. And I know there was a question earlier, and Robin started to answer. I didn't go in depth, so maybe it was fully answered, but in case anybody didn't have a chance to see, we were asked about, categories. How do you lay out the board? How do you think about these things? And it's totally up to you. Again, the only constant is change, right? So just make sure you're modeling any of the adjustments that you're making. We don't want to be adjusting too much, too fast, too soon for them. But having a centralized soundboard tends to work best for most of our learners, because if they're too spread out, then it becomes difficult for them to combine things. So think about how more can go with outside, with eat, with play, all done, same thing. So it gets challenging if things are too spread out. But lots of folks have started with the buttons spread out and then either moved them together or created a redundant central board and left, maybe like the outside button by the back door, that sort of thing. So totally up to you. If you are thinking about a centralized board and you're like, I don't want it to be taking up too much space or be too in the way, you can do a corner board like Sasha did here. But I want you to note that Sasha left enough room for her dogs to get behind the board and watch her while pressing. So many of our learners like to watch us. So that's the other drawback sometimes of having the buttons too spread out. We can press them on our way to that activity while actively modeling. But if you're working in another room or, playing on your phone or watching TV, and they've got to go out of sight to press an outside button, a lot of our learners want to watch us at first while they're learning. So that's a big challenge, having that distance. So hence why a small central board to start off tends to be best. Or, while it's small, move it around. You can bring it if you're, working upstairs half the day, bring it upstairs if that's where your learner's with you. You can always, adjust, make it work for you all. But despite this being a corner board, nice and space saving, there's still enough room for her learner to watch. So that's where scrolling through here, getting inspired, hopefully that helps with thinking about layout, that sort of thing as well. All right. Make sure I didn't miss too much here. And in addition to the free resources that I just shared, we also have the Let's Get Them Pressing course. This is a 4-week class taught by Diane of NeuroDog Training, and Alexis with Bunny. So deep dive with live coaching and asynchronous modules into the buttons, into the process of teaching. So, so much fun. If you are interested, there is 25% off, and we just announced the next course. So get in while it's open. It starts, I think, on April 18th, I believe, but it should be in the link in the chat. Here's some of the great material that is covered. We are also working on a cat specific course that should be coming in May. So if anybody is interested in that, be on the lookout for more info as well. And that will be with yours truly. And if anyone is realizing they need more buttons or hex tiles and want to be ready to go with that, there's 15% off that's good for the next 24 hours. We'll go ahead and add that to the chat for you all. And if you have any feedback for us, always looking to improve, got a feedback link that we will add as well. All right, y'all. So let's see what questions came through. And then feel free to raise your hand if you have additional questions or anything that you'd like to chat through here and make this work for your crew. All right, let's see. So Amy says, my dog will press the buttons excitedly, but she just wants them all to be food buttons. I really don't want to keep feeding her. She's too food motivated, very communicative. She loves to tap things, but she just wants a snack. I gave up and recently broke them back out. Hope we can figure it out. Yeah, so Amy, try to think about ways that you can fulfill the food requests, but buy yourself more time. So I mentioned puzzle, buttons, things like that. So for my very food motivated cat, who, as I move out of the way, you can see that she is ready to make more food requests as soon as I am done teaching here. Hi, Katie Cat. I see you. You're very cute. So and now that she is one and we're working on cutting her back a little bit, she gets all of her kibble in kind of a puzzle feeder toy. So that is helping a bit. We'll also play like chase games. So I'll, throw a kibble for her to chase and find, or a few kibble for her to chase and find. I'll do a cookie scatter in the yard for the dogs anyway, not for her, but for the dogs, just a way for them to kind of snuffle through, eat more slowly. I'm trying to think. In your case, it might be advantageous to just have a more like a general eat button to start, and then you can follow through with whatever is reasonable in that moment. So you're not necessarily, saying, no to kibble, no to whatever, or whatever, specific snack things are. You can always add a bone button as well. Yeah, Robin, go ahead.
Bert loves frozen topples with bone broth in them, which are really low calorie and pretty long lasting. So I'd give that a try as well. So it's still food, but it's much longer lasting and very, like I said, very low calorie.
Thank you. Great idea. Yeah, and that works into Ash's little stuffed Kong as well, which I'm looking at it now. I'm like, there's just some soaked kibble mixed in with rice and bone broth in it. So it's a fairly inexpensive and lower calorie for little senior dude here. Napping hard, huh, bud? What's tough though is we find that if you just remove the food buttons, they're going to find ways to talk about food anyway. And if that's what's interesting to them, that's once they get it, and sounds like they potentially already get it, you can utilize that to teach other concepts too. So you see them getting frustrated because you're telling them, more later, then you can potentially be working on mad or frustrated as concepts. I know Calvin and Jason got to work on the mad button after slowing down the food requests a little bit. My cat Jasper, that was how we wound up working on it. So it led to more conversations. Kelly also added in the chat, thank you, Kelly, the surviving the spamming stage, which I think is that one with Julie. Let me click through and see here. Yep, that one's with Julie. So, and that one is tomorrow evening. Well, depending on your time zone. I'm very much looking forward to that one and what she has to say. Yeah, so thinking about other things that you can say yes to, uh, and then thinking about, for Adora, my border collie, because, ball and outside were so motivating, I very quickly put more and all done on her board and then realized that all done was more frustrating for her, unfortunately, because as I had taught it previously as a concept, it means the end of fun. So she was already frustrated, and then I'm also adding a button that means the end of fun. She's like, "This really sucks. What's the point of these buttons?" Until I realized, oh, maybe a now and later button is the better choice for her, since later means yes, just not right now. And that wound up being far more acceptable of an answer for her, got us a bit more patience, a bit more duration between activities, knowing like, okay, yes, acknowledged and heard. When I finish this task, we will go ahead and do what you want. Yes, but you need to wait for me to finish first. But Kelly added that that mentorship call that we were featuring with Julie, it's not just about spamming, but about enrichment, when to add new buttons, all that great info. And Calvin added, as a quick side note, when we added mad, I didn't realize how similar it sounded to our dad button. So I decided to use my name instead to avoid homonyms, which is such a great example. And is another example of, needing to change a button. So it's not something that we go into it intentionally planning to change the recording or the layout or whatever, but it's inevitable. So please don't beat yourselves up and don't let that hold you back from making decisions. Um, if it's between debating for a week what button you're going to put down or just recording a button and putting it down, just record the button and put it down. Okay, Charlotte asks, how do you decide when to add buttons? How many at a time? How soon after last ones? And so I wish I could give you a more specific answer, but there is a lot of nuance in this, and it really does depend on your learner. How to decide when to add buttons. Sometimes that so-called spamming, that repeated pressing, can be an indication that they're looking for something else to talk about, or that they don't have a way to express what it is that they want or need on their board already. If you see them pressing a button and then leading you somewhere that doesn't make sense to that button press, instead of being like, oh, they don't know what this button means, often it's actually them trying to be like, hey, I'm getting your attention, or I'm trying to communicate a need with the soundboard, but then let me use my body language to fill in the blanks here. So thinking about, all right, what are they using their body language for? Can I create a button for that? And again, we're still listening to their body language. If they're whining by the back door, I'm letting them out. That's not the time to be teaching the buttons. I'm never requiring that they come over and press if they've already shown me what they're interested in via body language. This is just an option. It's an opportunity to be specific and precise in what it is that they want. And once they realize that we're more inclined to say yes to a button press, and that they can give us those specifics and be heard and understood in this way, again, it takes time to build the foundation to get there. But once they get it, ooh, they're all about it. They take off with those buttons and love to press. So once they get it, the how many at a time, we don't want to frustrate and overwhelm them, but we've had reports of people adding like up to 6 buttons at a time, and the learners get it as long as you're modeling diligently. And if it's a concept that they already know, it's easier for you to add a couple buttons at the same time, or if they're things that go together. So the multi-button example that were added at once in my household was household member names. I had 5 learners plus me, so 6 name buttons got added at the same time. But it was while Adora was a sponge for the buttons. She wanted more to talk about. She wanted that specific. It was of interest to her. So that's where it's kind of depends. On average, though, I'm not adding more than 2 buttons at a time. But sometimes a group or category, it does make sense to add, so that you can model in contrast or in opposition. And how soon after the last ones? I try not to do too much, too fast, too soon. I don't want to overwhelm them. So I try not to make adjustments more than once a week on average. But if I added something and I can very clearly see that they're like, cool, all right, let me also press these, or if there's something else they're trying to communicate, I'm not going to let me being like, well, it's only been 5 days since I've added it. I'm not going to let that stop me from giving them what they're interested in talking about. Well, hopefully, I know that wasn't too specific, but hopefully that helped. And Kelly added, yes, no need to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Exactly. Thank you. A much more succinct way of saying all the things I'm explaining here. Additional questions, y'all? Double check. I think I
Morning.
got.
There
Yeah.
was there was one about barking at things outside, and what button ideas we had for it. And I said, if you can name it, you can tame it, basically. So what are they barking at outside? So is it
Mhm.
neighbors? Is it cars? Is it animals? And those would be my suggestions, but interested on your thoughts as well for word
Yeah.
ideas. That
Thank you.
Sorry, Ernie's ready for dinner.
We know that life. Thank you. And thank you for bringing that. I scrolled back up and found it. Yes, naming things. And what's so interesting is a lot of trainers and programs these days specifically work around labeling. So narrating, labeling, and kind of giving them that consistency. And we have seen, not all, but quite a few of our more reactive learners or anxious learners have really benefited from being able to tell us what it is that they're experiencing. I don't know if you all could hear Adora barking a little bit in the background earlier. I'm not sure why she was barking, but if she were out right now, she might, go over to the board and be pressing something like hear sound or neighbor or giving me that information about her sound sensitivities, which is so interesting that she's able to do that. But it took us well over a year to get to the point where she was interested in pressing a button instead of barking or in addition to barking, depending, which I'm okay with. It's behavior is communication. Um, so it's not something that they tend to get right away. But even if we're just able to narrate to them and talk to them and tell them as best we can tell, right? What's going on out there. And sometimes the answer is, I don't know. What is that sound? Weird sound, loud sound. You know, that's okay too. Just acknowledging that something is going on so that they know that you're aware, that can be really validating for a lot of them. So talking to them, working on refocusing to you. The reason I caution, though, not to expect too much board use right away with that is the board, again, very abstract concept and tool. We need to build that foundation first. And the amount of excitement or physiological arousal that barking at a window entails, and then expecting them to turn around and do something potentially fine motor control wise with the buttons, that's a big challenge and a big transition energy wise for them. So it takes time to get there. But that's why I think narrating, and then once you're ready, putting at least the button concepts down on the board that you seem to be narrating most often or that seem most upsetting to your learner. And then even if you can push the button, they have no interest in it yet, no big deal. You can at least push it. Sometimes hearing the button being pressed gets through to them more than just narration would, because we've built so much value into what's recorded on the buttons that it has importance, holds weight in a way that just vocalization doesn't, for some of our learners, particularly when they're already upset about something. Yeah. And so again, that's where, we have our neighbor. And so again, keeping track of what it is that you're saying to them, I realized that just friend and stranger weren't enough. We needed a third category of neighbor for someone who maybe they don't know, or maybe there's somebody in the distance and they're like, whoa, what's going on out there? But no worries, it's not a stranger who potentially I am also worried about. It's definitely not a friend though, because they don't know that neighbor. That would be an inaccurate label. But yeah, it's a neighbor. They're allowed to be there. It's not a stranger to worry about, but we're not going to go see them like a friend either. So that's where, yeah, pay attention to how you're talking about things, and that can be revealing.
And the other thing I'll add is Bert's pretty sensitive to noise outside, and I got him the Ear Pros by Rex Specs and gave him a quiet time button to ask for them. And he actually will ask for them if he's being overstimulated by noises that are going on outside, like my neighbor's music being too loud or whatever, because I live in an apartment complex, which is pretty advanced, but you know, you just verbally model it when you're putting them on after you've desensitized them to it. That's another thing that you can do to help with that barking as well, if it's noise related.
I love that. Thank you. I know I keep hoping that they'll make one small enough for Ash, but at this rate, he's losing his hearing before they're going to make the ear pros in his size. Yeah, that I love that. Yeah, and seeing it's so interesting seeing the number of animals who are willing to advocate for themselves in that way, whether it's Parker asking for a sweater, like, and so many of us just assume like, why would a dog want to wear a sweater? I'll admit I fell into that for a while, but then we have dogs via buttons that are literally, and cats that are literally like, hey, put this thing on me. I want to be wearing this. I feel safe or comfortable or whatever. Um, it's interesting. Amy mentioned modeling it, but when she grabbed the harness, she ran and hid under the bed. So it could be that she's just testing out what the buttons are doing. A lot of learners, though, don't like things going over their head. So I've been debating putting a button down for my Border Collie Adora's back on track jacket. It needs to go over her head, which she doesn't love. But I think it gives her relief when it's on because it's got um, I don't even know, like mineral fibers throughout that are supposed to help with uh, her muscles and whatnot. But that's why I'm like, I think when it's on, it'd be comfy for her, but she hates the process of wearing it. So maybe a button, so that she can initiate it would be good. But Amy, I'm wondering if the harness that going over the head, if there might be some other things going on there that are making things extra challenging. But hard to say. Um, if you have a way to go outside without putting a harness on, you can always try that, but it might not be feasible. Robin suggests duct tape and a pool noodle in a circle. Love it. And we just started getting a thunderstorm here, so hence Ash unfortunately is going to look like he's having a seizure. But sorry, Ash. Oh, buddy. Poor buddy. Ash hears storm sound, loud storm sound. I know. And so this is where you can make a judgment call. I'm not going to tell him he's safe right now because he's terrified. Even though, yeah, he is safe, he doesn't feel safe. So I'm not going to narrate safe in this moment while he's having a meltdown. I'm going to try to meet him where he's at and just narrate the stuff that's bothering him instead. Oh, buddy. I know. I know. Yeah, this came up faster than we were anticipating here. All right, y'all. Let's see if any more questions come through. While I'm waiting a second, I'm just going to close some of my windows. Because, yeah, it's raining sideways. And apologies in advance if I lose any internet connection.
No worries. Charlotte, for the park button, I would use Morgan's suggestion of recording it at the location and pressing it while you're at the park and differentiating it that way. And also, you can like rub the button in the grass at the park as well because it'll have a different smell. And then it'll get kind of scented with the